Okay, I think that all of us here who know George know how much he admires punctuality. So we're going to try to start within, 5 or 10, maybe 15 minutes of start time. And just to that end, I'm going to turn things over to Nigel Brief. My name's Dublin Call. David DePoe. We'll be doing something later. No?
Yeah, so my name is Michael Brief. I'm a school teacher with the 12th District School Board. There's still in there. So we are live right now. George is watching. Do it again. We hope to try to do a Skype so it can be both ways, but that's not technically going to happen tonight. So you'll be able to hear us. We are recording, and we'll be able to share messages with them and things like that. Okay. So tonight we do have some scheduled speakers, but we also will allow for an open mics for people to come up if you feel comfortable and you'd like to say some remarks. We totally want to acknowledge that his daughter Lisa is here. Satu, give a little wave. Okay, and so Chris Clark and some of the family were able to make it. So
And Hazel?
Hazel! And so people waiting. So we'll get started right into our program right away. Sorry, I was supposed to tell a little anecdote. So my little anecdote of George Martell is 10 years ago. I just started becoming a school teacher, and we were doing some organizing, of course, in Rexdale, North Etobicoke. I guess they now call it Ford Nation. And so I'm at it's after school, it's at a community meeting that's been called, and I'm sitting there, and there's, a group of people. We've got, Somali with mothers, we've got some other young racialized people, and all of a sudden this gray-haired, white-haired guy walks into the meeting and sits down and says, "I'm George Martell." And we just what is he doing here? He's all the way from downtown. But he was so amazing, understood, connected directly to the issues that we were talking about and fighting for, and helped to support us to fight in a number of struggles that were up there. I don't want to bore you with all of it, but just know that we knew that he would leave his wife, tried at least an hour to come up to North Etobicoke to help us, and he did that 2 or 3 times a week, and we're always so grateful for that. So why don't we get started with our first speaker?
Okay, now just one little thing. We're expecting a caterer. One of the main things about having the caterer is they're going to bring glasses, and we got a few. But if you're gonna have a beer, maybe just have it out of the bottle. If you're gonna have a glass of wine or something, share it with somebody else, probably one who likes the same kind of wine you do. Okay? Hopefully the guy will show up with the glasses. I don't really care about the rest of the food, but the glasses are important. Okay, all right, thank you, Nigel. Alrighty, so it's wonderful that you're all here, and we're gonna call on our first speaker, David Clanfield. Wanted to say a couple of things. So David, come on up.
Okay. Where's the camera? I want to speak to George. Okay, this is it. Okay, and I've got some things. This is right. Okay. Okay, I wrote some things down in case I lose track. I feel a bit odd leading all this off because I'm a lifelong French professor with a background in medieval literature. So it may seem odd that I start all this, but actually it's really relevant because I can point out that George's name is medieval French for hammer. And my name, which is Clanfield, refers to place where fields were kept clean by scythes and sickles. And so I thought we would make a good partnership. But more importantly and ironically, I learned that George's family, and I think there are people who will agree I'm not making this up, has traced itself back. Whoa, no.
That is just George.
He doesn't want me to mention this, I know. The ancient French warrior, Charles Martell, who won a great victory for France against the invading... Oh, this one as well? No. Just hold it closer to your mouth. Hold it closer to my mouth. George knows what I'm going to say anyway. The other one. Okay. All right. No feedback. Brilliant. Okay, he won a great victory for France over the advancing Moorish army in Poitiers in the year 732, so a few years back. I did find images of the remains of the castle that had served as Charles' fiefdom and should doubtless now be yours, George, though I have since lost the picture, so I may not be able to help you. More importantly, the line of Charles Martell, his grandson went on to become Charlemagne. And far from potentially inheriting a crumbling castle, George, as you know, you should have staked your claim to an empire now consisting of most of what is now Western Europe, especially after Brexit. Now, it is a testimony to your faithfulness to a progressive socialist agenda that you have never asserted your feudal rights despite my offer to share them with you. Although I do not actually recall, George, when I first met you. The reason is that ever since I came to Toronto in late 1960s, it seems as though you have always been in the wings of my life. And almost everything I ever did politically, or anything I wrote politically, is largely due to your encouragement and your efforts. I followed your career as an inner city school trustee in the late 70s, and you got me to follow you as the next trustee, particularly continuing your work in special education politics, something that has stayed with me, as you know, for the rest of my life. More on that in a moment. When I stepped down at the end of my trustee's time, you then got me into advisory politics and with what we thought of as a democratic socialist party at the time, and as in the heady days of the Peterson-Ray Accord. Following this up by bringing Doug Little and me together with you to found our schools ourselves. And this, of course, engendered all kinds of writing projects on my part that I hadn't actually initially been planning, but you were so good at getting me to do these things. And you introduced me to a wonderful teachers' cooperative collective in Quebec, and through them the whole cooperative learning movement of Célestin Freinet, and through that we were able to start incorporating curriculum and pedagogy politics into what was usually mainly the pursuit and allocation of resources. So it did broaden my understanding of things at your if I never get this other page open. Yes, here we are. Now, when the unlikely happened and an NDP government was formed under a Liberal leader in waiting, you brought Doug Little and myself over to see Tony Silipo, and it was decided that one of us was going to join, we hoped, with that future Minister of Education, and it turned out actually not to be Doug and not to be George, but to be me. I think you stepped out there. It was an impractical honour. 18 months of trying to steer ministry policy towards an equity-based reform fell at the cabinet table when the future Liberal leader snuffed it out. You urged me to report my experience to the Socialist Studies Association, reminding me of what I was supposed to be doing, and by the end of that weekend, circumstances brought my ministry career to an abrupt end, just in time for me to avoid being embroiled in the social contract. And so on it went, on the Ontario education lines, our schools ourselves again, education action, in the City Advisory Committee, wherever I went, or wherever George went, I ended up going along with you, George. So you have been the stimulus and the architect of pretty well all my political activism, such as it was, the agent provocateur of almost all my political writing, and the political writing of all those whose work appeared in the publications you pioneered, print and online. And whenever I hesitated, and whenever I felt my contribution was falling short, you were my goad and my tuning section. Now, I just want to share with other people my overwhelming, one of the most powerful images I had of George, which taught me a lot, which, and I think a lot of, if you saw it, is in the 1970s, he was school trustee. And George was recommending a thorough overhaul of the special education department, given that the evidence was so clear that while some special education ostensibly was intended to help students who had various kinds of disabilities, was actually working as a streaming mechanism. Programs that labelled, stigmatised and segregated working class and immigrant children as backward or disturbed, condemned them to low expectations and exclusions, and are just as much a part of the denial of a powerful education as the existence of vocational schools, which you also fought, George. So, the response of the Special Education Department was to mobilise parents of all of the handicapped children they could find and say, your handicapped child is going to be denied an education by this man, when in fact actually they were being denied a proper education by the board, that was persuade, oh, I've done something wrong again. Keep it right here. Do you want me to go back to the beginning, George? Is this one? Yeah. My goodness. I feel almost like, beginning to feel a bit like Troy Spicer. The response, so all the anxious parents were brought to pile criticism after criticism and to stigmatise George as much as possible. But George, of course, you knew that the people that were being left out of this. That's exciting. Okay, have I finished my time? Yeah. Anyway, you had expected this, and you knew that your duty to the working class, racialised communities you knew was to remember the injustice and not be knocked off course by the dishonest tricks of the powerful. The acuteness and steadfastness of that understanding profoundly marked me and has stayed with me forever. That is what I value, George. So what did we all learn from you, George, about being a public intellectual and activist? Getting elected as a school trustee was not the road to a political career, nor the activation and maintenance of the electoral machine. It was an opportunity to reach out to and mobilise people in broader political, social justice struggles. Progressive education activists, elected or not, could and should help bring parents, teachers, community activists, and the movement into close contact as part of these efforts. The duty of a public elected official was to try to pass decision-making powers away from the central administrators to local communities. Progressive elected officials could and should play a central role in enabling research into school systems, exposing its aggressive effects on poor and racialised communities. In recent years, just coming to the end now, in recent years, you and I, George, met almost weekly for lunch at the Regency restaurant near your house, and there we discussed that combination of socialism, psychoanalysis, grassroots activism, and personal lives, which has always characterised the person that I know in you, George. Now that you are contemplating the limits that we all face sooner or later, you are conscious of having one great writing effort underway, which needs completion. A critical history of Ontario education along with strategic advice to present and future generations. I am one of several here tonight who are determined to see that acute leukemia will not silence your work or weaken your legacy. In this, we operate in the recollection of France Fanon. France Fanon was diagnosed with acute leukemia in 1961. He was given a year to live. He decided he would write a book in that year, and it was published a few days before he passed. That book was The Wretched of the Earth. Leukemia did not silence Fanon, and we shall see that it does not silence you, George.
Okay, thanks very much, David. Now, we're going to call on Mr. Little to come up and say a few words. Doug, go.
You do know Fifi has AV people.
What's that?
Fifi does have AV people. We should have brought them with us. Who knew?
Hello? Hello? Higher? Evening, brothers and sisters. They taught me this in NDP candidate school. One envelope and a Sharpie. If you're saying more than that, you're talking too long. That's your signal. So, much like David, I feel like I'm talking directly to George. I'll talk to the rest of you as well, but most of mine is a series of thank yous to George for one thing after another that is heartfelt, and I'm a little bit emotional about it, so do the best I can. Okay, I'm a little bit emotional about it. George has meant a lot to me over the years, and I'm sure he's meant a lot to many of you. He doesn't remember this because he wouldn't. First time I saw George was 1974 when I was an elementary school teacher candidate at what was called the Toronto Teachers College at Pape and Mortimer. And there was a panel discussion, and there was 3 suits and George. George was looking very proletarian in work boots and a sweater, in contrast to the others. And the rest of them were all making various aspects of small talk. And George was saying things like, downtown kids aren't dumb, they just need a better program. And I sort of thought in 1974, I wonder if that guy, that's the one that's making a bit of sense and what he's talking about. I've spent my university times in kind of radicalism of the Trotskyism variety, and selling newspapers and going to meetings and demonstrating and things like that. And I had kind of gravitated over to Waffle and gravitated over to the NDP after that. And but I had decided to become a teacher, but my connections between socialism and education were incomplete. And I actually credit George with being the guy who tied that up for me and showed me where the connections were and where the useful work can be done. After that Toronto Teachers College meeting, what's the name of the bookstore? It used to be on the end of Rochdale, on the east end of it wasn't Bob Miller, SCM bookstore. I remember going in there and picked up this book called The Politics of Canadian Education, and George was the contributing editor, and thinking, gee, this book makes a lot of sense. And it kind of connected you to a magazine called, this magazine's about schools, and gee, I finally found the kind of people and the ideology and the kind of common sense aspect of it that had a lot of effect on the rest of my life. Eventually, I didn't see George much in between those meetings, just read his stuff and other people that contributed to the magazine until I got to the board. George, as David said, had just been postgraduate. He finished in 78, and I came on the board with David in 80 and Bear and other people like that around the 1980. I learned, George really, I had a lot of loose threads rolling around in my head, and George kind of tightened them up for me, teaching me that there's a lot of people who will say small classes are good, and lots of more primary education are good, but really that streaming is the issue. It's not even very expensive to do it right. You just need to reorganize the system. It can be done, and to a large extent that we've made progress in that area. When George and I were around the board, only 50% of the kids were in university-bound education and 18% were in basic level education. The former is now up to about 75%, and the latter is down to about 3 or 4%. So it's progress. It's not what we would like, but it's progress. And wherever you trace the streaming issue in Ontario, you trace it back to George. Whether he helped, whether he met with Jim up at OFL at the time, or other places around the province, wherever it would pop up, it would be him that was behind. He was behind what was, in my view, substantial in education. The rest of it is just good funding and good ideas. I guess you were on there to Mud Pie and help his dear friend Bob Davis and Meredith and Satu and others that contributed over there. And when I got off the board, George invited me along with David to participate in our schools ourselves, and that was it was a big help to me. George always helped me with my writing in ways. He would review articles and he'd say, "Gee, that's pretty good, but here's how it could be better." Say it to yourself out loud. You've got a good populist voice there because you're not an academic, but say it out loud to yourself. Read it to yourself and see if it still makes the same sense you had before. And I would go home and read it out loud to myself and think, "Gee, I could change a couple of things to be much better." And I thank you for that, George. George and I like to call each other comrade. We know there's a bit of irony in that. It's a bit out of date. It's a bit out of style. But at the same time, we're a little bit nostalgic for what it really means. Not just a friend, a brother in the struggle for a better social and economic world. Around 1985, for the first time in a long time, since the early 70s, a kind of a right-wing group got control of the board, and for about 3 years, ran amok there for a while. And one of the things they threatened was heritage languages there, and George's friend, Dorothy Chin, asked him if there was a way she could help, because she had a lot of connections with a lot of Chinese teachers. And George says, "Well, I could help, but there's this friend of mine, Doug Little, does more of that kind of thing. He's good at allocating resources and triaging and things like that. I think you ought to meet with him." And so Dorothy Chin and I had a couple of lunches, and we've had a few more over the last 30 years. That worked out okay, George. I know that wasn't your prime intention, but I have to thank you for that one, too. She was a little bit resistant, as she should have been for a while, but my charm finally prevailed. After a while, George thought, you and Bob and other people ought to be teaching something at York University. There's an opportunity there. Why don't you seem to know a lot about Ontario education and politics and where they all make a nexus and kind of contribute. Could you draw me up a course outline for the politics of Ontario education, 1945 to 2000 and whatever? And I did, and I actually spent 3 years up at York, traveling back and forth, teaching that course. It even helped me in the process of what you learn from students while you're teaching them. It stuck in my mind as well. That was a real help. Finally, I got a job at OSSTF headquarters, and they had a no moonlighting clause in there, so you really couldn't tell them, no, Tuesday nights are both for me. No, Tuesday night you're going to Timmins, okay? And you're going to like it. And if you don't like your assignment, you say, that would be a challenge and a professional growth opportunity. That's how we know you didn't like it, but you don't end up in trouble. So that was the end of that, but I really did enjoy that experience. Along the way, there's been many parties with George and Elaine and many of the friends who aren't with us, like Bob, and anymore. And just a lot of thank yous, George. That's all I can say. Much like David, your life has weaved its way in and out of mine, and I'm thankful for every minute.
I think one of the ways that George made a living was saving people from Toronto Teachers College. Toronto Teachers College, which by that time, it was 75, I'm a lot younger than you were. But by 75, it had graduated to become OTEC. And it was like after being in, university and everything else like that, it was like going back to high school, And one day George showed up, and I thought, God almighty, this is like the best day of the whole year. So, we've all been saved by George in one way or another. Okay, so I'm going to call on Meredith McFarquhar, who's right there, and she's going to say a couple of words too. Thank you.
David, may I suspend, please?
Okay. I'll help her.
Hi, George.
Okay, Les.
Thank you, Lisa. Maybe this isn't going to work. But yeah, that's good. Okay. Thank you. Hi, George. I wish you were here in person, but since you can't be, I'm so glad to be able to talk to you at this incredible gathering of people who love you and hold you in just such high esteem. I should have a piece of paper like Doug had, but I don't. I have to write things out more than that. Anyway, I'm going to begin by taking us back a few decades to the 1970s, a time of so-called liberalization in education. You remember the Hall Dennis Report, student-centered learning, active learning, learning styles. And this was also a time, which I don't need to tell you, but it was a time of significant demographic changes in Toronto and the development of the first in Ontario multicultural and race relations policies for schools by the Toronto and York Boards of Education. Now, why am I mentioning these things? Because it was in the midst of these educational developments that you and Satu and other progressive educators, a number of whom I see here today, I don't dare name them because I'm bound to leave somebody out, noticed that there was something drastic missing from the dialogue, namely the issue of social class and its impact on children's learning. And it was to address this issue that you and Satu came up with the idea of developing a series of children's readers that would reflect and give voice to the urban working class children. Your concept was visionary. One could even say revolutionary for the time. And my understanding is that Satu wrote one of the books, Marco and Michaela, and I just happen to have a copy of it here. As you can see, it is well worn because it's been so well loved. And she also wrote part of another book, co-authored another, and my understanding is that you persuaded James Lorimer of the need to develop what became the Where We Live series. 5 little books used mostly in grade 4 classrooms. And this Where We Live series became the first of 6 series that span grades 1 to 8 in books for classrooms, which are outlined here. So really, this series that you and Satu thought of was the first series that went on to develop more progressive books that Lorimer had for classrooms. Okay, let's move ahead to the 1980s. I was first introduced to these books when I had taken a year off high school teaching and was hired by Lorimer to promote the books for classrooms, which included the Where We Live series, to teachers and to consultants. And what a breath of fresh air it was for me to discover Marco and Michaela, About Nellie and Me, Cedric and the North End Kids, and the other books in the series, books that were real and free from the Dick and Jane sensibility and mentality. And how affirming to find a Canadian series that consciously bridged the gap between the real lives of urban working class kids and those of the characters in the reading materials used in schools. Told in accessible language, these were not the controlled vocabulary or high-interest, low-vocab drivel that was found in some libraries. Rather, characters such as Marco and Michaela looked like the kids in the downtown classrooms, and they lived in the neighborhoods that looked very much like their own. For classroom reading materials at that time, this was a first, and the concept was ahead of its time, way before the inclusive classroom was a topic of discussion in many staff rooms. Where We Live reflected the demographic changes that had taken place in Toronto. when readers tended to show only white faces. And I remember talking to my boss, Linda Shepherd, at the time about some other series. Once the ministry came down with the policies, the anti-racist and multicultural policies, some publishers got a little nervous about, we need to have a few black faces in the book. But instead of having real children who came from a culture, came from pictures of real children who were black, what they did instead was they just took white faces and colored them in. So the difference between that and what the series that Satu and George had conceived was unbelievable. Okay. Another interesting thing, the visuals in the books were photographs, and you'll see in a couple of minutes why this is even more significant. They were photographs, and they were photographs of real children in the neighborhoods that the children came from in the schools. And this was radical at the time when the policies on multiculturalism and anti-racist education were in their infancy. The concept was original. No wonder Margaret Lawrence and Margaret Atwood agreed to be the consulting editors. I don't know too many children's series that I've seen that have those two people as their consulting editors. Okay, now George, I want to switch courses a bit to a more general note, and I'm going to pick up my notes for this. Ever since I've known you, you have been an incisive in your analysis of educational trends and way ahead of your time with regards to thinking about education. You've been fearless in taking on major issues as you saw them, whether it was streaming or, as you have put it, going nowhere at your own pace in some special education, or the exclusivity of curriculum and learning materials. You have been tireless in keeping your finger on the pulse of ministry educational trends and in addressing them with practical solutions, the social injustices that you have seen in our institutions. You are so passionate and committed to what you believe that you're able to persuade people to do something they would never have dreamed to try. I swear only you could have convinced James Lorimer that a reading series that gave visibility to working class kids could also be profitable for the company. Your enthusiasm and boundless energy and vision for what can be done even convinced a teacher to give up a teaching job to work on the Where We Live series. And it was your dogged determination and ability to inspire that motivated everyone on the Where We Live team to persevere through all the setbacks and tough slogging that are part and parcel of every visionary project. I'm going to close my remarks by fast forwarding to August 2016. Linda Shepherd, the teacher who happened to give up her teaching job to work on the series and who also happened to hire me to promote them, she and I were visiting the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. And we came upon a collection of photographers whose work had highlighted human rights issues over many years in many contexts. And we recognized one of the names, Vincenzo Pietropalo. To access his photographs, we had to push a button. And to our delight and astonishment, the very first photo to emerge was a photo of the cover of Marco and Michaela. That's this book here, okay? In the Museum of Human Rights. George, your work and inspiration have indeed had a long reach, and you must be gratified to know that a book in the Where We Live series has received this broader validation. For many of us, this is a wonderful reminder of your great inspiration and creative thought about education, and your ability to transform revolutionary ideas into something real. What a tribute it is to you and Satu and to everyone else who worked on the Where We Live series, to have had the series referred to and the cover of Marco and Michaela exhibited in the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Congratulations on living your life to the fullest with such energy, passion, and commitment to social justice. And on a personal note, thank you so much for your friendship with Bob and me, and for being such a good friend to him in his final years. And thank you also for the many times you've allowed us to share your life with us. Thank you.
Okay, there's food. I think I'm getting a message, there's food. So what we're gonna do is, there's a couple more people who are gonna talk. I'm just gonna read a message, because there are a bunch of people who couldn't come. And so the first message, George, I have to keep remembering to look at the same way. Okay, yeah, he's in that little queue. He's not okay, so anyway, from Raven Connell, University of Sydney in Australia. She says, I'm on the wrong continent to get to the event forum, but I'd be grateful if you could add my name to any expression of goodwill and admiration for George, who has been an inspiration for me for his intelligence, commitment, and imagination. All best wishes. From David Livingston, who's away today, George, and he wrote a poem. I'm going to do my best. The big book on education reform may never see the light of day, but to help working class kids in so many smaller ways. How we continue to engage and act and change action after your big fall has set the highest standard for us all to heed the call. So, among many George's strengths, one of them is not height judgment. Is not, yeah, maybe I shouldn't really push this a little too far out here when I want to paint the fence on the top floor of the house, but anyway. Okay, so I'm going to call on Trish Hennessy and Hugh McKenzie to say a few words, and then we're going to take a little break. You guys can go and get something to eat and not, starve to death out here. Okay.
Hi, George. I am very pleased to bring greetings and good wishes and gratitude to George Martell from all of my colleagues at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. We consider George a valued and cherished member of the CCPA family. I first personally met George, I think it was about 17 years ago, but the first time I sat around the Ontario Alternative Budget round table, which was chaired by Hugh McKenzie, who's going to say a few words in a moment. And George was a fixture around that round table, and we all learned a lot from what he had to add to that round table. It's not the only impact that George has had on the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. He wanted to ensure that our schools ourselves lived beyond him, and so he was instrumental, using the persuasive powers that you've already heard about. He was instrumental in convincing our think tank to take over the publication of our schools ourselves, and we're grateful that we did that. And so, George, I'm going to read a message from Erica Shaker, who is now the director of, the editor of our schools ourselves. So these are Erica's words. She writes, the first time I spoke with George was when I was a grad student at the University of Guelph. He had no idea who I was, but Rick Salutin had suggested that I get in touch. Little did I know that destiny was on that call. Less than 5 years later, I was working at the CCPA. We were meeting with George to talk about how the CCPA could keep our schools ourselves going, and the rest, as they say, is history. George not only continued to write for the magazine, he would be in touch every few months with a suggestion for an issue or a name for me to follow up with. His support for the magazine was remarkable, and his dedication to progressive movements and, of course, to progressive education is unparalleled. If we could bottle that energy, that insight, and that commitment, we would all be much richer for it. As it is, we are richer, immeasurably so, for his friendship, his wisdom, and his kindness. So, George, thank you from the entire CCPA family. We are keeping the torch lit for you. And here's Hugh.
Hi, George. I realized when I was getting ready to come and speak tonight that you were going to be watching, and so I was going to have to choose my words carefully. because there's always the risk in speaking with you that something you might say might be taken as volunteering to do something. And that's actually apt to what I wanted to say, because I was thinking about what to say tonight, the word that struck me about George was charismatic. And not in the sense of the superficiality that people assign the word to with politicians and other celebrities, but charismatic in a very personal sense. And the best way for me to describe it, because I'm a bit prosaic in the way I think about these things. My definition of charismatic as it relates to you, George, is your capacity to get people to do things that they didn't know they wanted to do until you discussed it with them. And your ability to keep you going when you're 3 months into a 7-month project that you were supposed to be able to do overnight, and feeling that you cannot not do it. That's George's charisma. And everybody, I'm sure everybody in this room has had the experience of the look. You walk into a room, a conversation with George, maybe just casually at a party, or at a meeting, or at an alternative budget steering committee meeting, or whatever, and you know you're in trouble when George says, you wouldn't believe what they're doing. And then he'd fix you with that look. And you knew that you weren't going to be able to get out of the conversation until you had volunteered to do whatever it was that George had in mind for you. And George was always full of ideas. And I'm actually kind of glad that you're on the other side of this camera instead of here, because I'm sure you'd express them right now. All sorts of ideas about what other people can do, including everybody in this room. We've all benefited enormously from doing exactly what you told us to do over these years. And I'm glad that people are turning the camera around every once in a while, because I think more of a tribute to you than any of the words that anybody's saying in the microphone is who's here. This is your family, this is your community, this is the progressive educational community that you were part of and nurtured for so many years, and they're all here to pay tribute to you, and that's the best possible tribute that anybody could offer you. I just want to say one last thing in closing. One of the things that's really special about George is that he was part of a group. I don't know if they ever really thought of themselves as a group, but there was a group in the 60s and 70s in Toronto, people who came out of the academic community, who devoted themselves to public service, either focusing on public policies or in some cases running for public office. People like David Crombie and David Clanfield and Mike Goldrick and Jack Layton and others who became active in this city through their engagement in the academic community. We don't have that to that extent today. It's not nearly as strong as it was. Maybe someday it will, but George, you were the epitome of the engaged intellectual in our community, and we're all in great debt to you as a result of that.
Okay, so we're going to take a little break now, and during the break, go have some food. During the break, if you'd like to just come up and look into the camera and say stuff that George can't reply to, now's the time.
happening in the background, so somebody just want to come up, right? Speak and the youth will serve in
George, I could say so much to you. You've meant so much to me over the years. I've been tilting at your windmills for a while. But you know what I really want to say? I love you. Be well.
on the microphone and you can see me. Clay and I were just walking through all those kitchen cabinets or kitchen cabals we used to have.
My mother is remembered, started my radicalization in 1971. And we were very much a part of that.
That's right. Hey, George. Hold on one second. Can you hear me?
George, I am so glad we had that dinner together at the Senator just a few months ago. He was an enormous amount to me. And I want you to know that the Jeremy Corbyn enormous victory obviously confirms what your voting dimension and what you've been proposing. The question is whether we have the capacity to do it here. And as usual, man, we were right. Thinking of you all the time.
right here. Is this a camera? Yeah. Really? So let's pretend that this is George Martell. George! My name is Steve Smith, and you may remember me, I think we met a couple of times. I'm here on behalf of my wife, Anna Jessup, who was unable to make this event because she is doing her teaching years unpaid for the weekend. That's something that you're familiar with. I hate to say it, George, but when my wife, Anna, came home, and she was very excited one day about the fact that you were going to be at a meeting with her, and some of her friends were trying to make community organizing happen in her union from the elementary teachers in Toronto. And I hate to say it, but when she said George Martell is going to be there, I have to say, I raised my eyebrows and I said, who is that? And I just want to say that even though my wife can't be here, I can speak for myself. And since that time when your name was just a bunch of disconnected syllables, not connected to a person, that it's become a household name. And that you have really imparted a lot of wisdom and knowledge and inspiration for young activists, socialists, teachers who really want to make a difference in their community and public education. And that is something that will continue making a big difference and help my wife in the work that she's doing. And I'm exactly I'm very sorry, and she's very sorry that she cannot be here to deliver the message. I can't speak for myself, and you've become a household name in our family. And thank you very much for all you've done. Perfect. And look up.
Now? Okay. George, hi. It's Ann Bird. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, but I did want to say hello. And I hope you're enjoying this event. People are so excited to talk to you and to talk about you and all of your accomplishments. And I wanted to thank you personally for everything. I'm going to defend my doctoral thesis this summer. Today I just got my external exam and I'm sorted out, which is Donna Leroy from Guelph, you may know her. And Wally and David are still on my committee. They hung in with me till the end, long after they retired. And I'm going to be defending her on the 25th of August. So I want to thank you so much, especially for getting me through the door to David. And he was a perfect choice for me all these years. And you were a wonderful teacher and a wonderful mentor and friend. And I just want to thank you very much. All the best to you. And I just am so happy to be able to share today. The patient was so sad, but I just wanted to reflect back on when we met when I was a student at the University of my prof. I remember how often we discuss issues around special education, and at the time I didn't understand the concepts, and I remember thinking about it, and then at the time of special education, I remember applying to the master's program and calling you up and saying that you've been right all along, and I forever thank you for changing my entire life.
So we're going to get started now.
Okay, everybody. Please continue meeting. But before, we're going to do a couple of songs for George here. Before we do, we just want to, first of all, thank Ida Sadler. Oh, speak louder? Speak louder. Okay. People should speak louder. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much. So I just want to thank Ida Sadhu and the different people. So I'm going to mention Miguel, we're not looking out to Miguel and Ida. We want to say thank you very much to people 4,400 who donated a bunch of money to help this thing happen. It wasn't cheap getting all this stuff together here. And we want to thank the Center for Social Justice, who's also volunteering some money. And there is a very nice coffee can over there that says donations on it, because in spite of all of the efforts on the part of people 4,400, Center for Social Justice, Nigel's Special Trust Fund, it's Jocelyn's Trust Fund, I'm sorry about that. So anyway, we still could use a few bucks to pay for something. To put too far. Okay, so we got a couple of songs. Excuse me, folks. This song that I need to tell you about was written by my brother. It was written by Bubby, and it's a tribute to Brother George, our angel. What he was saying about the wolf, right? That prompted everything. It's the wolf. I really smiling down on us. Best of angels are hard to see. They like to run around and hide. They play inside. Blessed angels spoke my heart. Blessed nice night, it's a choice. They pull me like the inside. And you've got a heart, you've got a voice. He was a young boy in a cold, strange land. Sword and tools at his hand. Trying so much to keep his skin. Fighting dangers from within. Best of angels love to play. He was bad mind and loved to drink. The life that I spent between clouds of shine and love and fun. George is especially going to like this there. Since we're above all the voice all the time. Like everybody else in the lab. They got no religion there, but they've got crazy ideas to burn. I think they're all a bunch of socialists. I want everybody to take their turn. He was a young boy in a strange cold land. Scared with no tools in his hand. Tried so much to keep his skin. Scaring dangers from within. Never know when you get it on forth as it set up that hand. Pretty soon they got to meet us up here. Okay, this next tune you might be familiar with, and it's amazing how applicable it is. It's called Which Side Are You On? Nothing more needs to be said.
We have a belief that everyone can sing, so we're going to let's do it.
Good workers, good news for you, Martell. That good old union that has come in here to help. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Well, I got you like a miner, and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the union. And wherever sorrows one, so decide what you are. Decide what you are. Decide what you are. Decide what you are. This ain't hard to tell me. There are no rules there. You'll either be a lucky man or decide what you are. Decide what you are. Decide what you are. Decide what you are. They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. That elders be a union and those that were unions. Decide what you are. Decide what you are. Decide what you are. Decide what you are. Workers understand and tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab? Will you be a decide what you want. Decide what you want. Decide what you want. Decide what you want. Don't stand for the bosses. Don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we're organized. Decide what you want. Decide what you want. Decide what you want. Decide what you want. One more time. Decide what you want. Decide what you want. Decide what you want. Decide what you
And then we would cook cornmeal porridge. We'd share you. Get my feet on my holy carrot, so I just, cause I'm a push on through. That's what I'm gonna do now. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be alright now. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be alright now. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be alright now. Everything is gonna be alright now. Woman, no problem. No woman, no woman, no problem. Hey, little sister, don't shed more tears. No woman, no cry.
Thank you. It's an honor to do this, Sir George. I first met him in Riverdale in 1995, and he's been in an inspiration in and out of my life ever since. I was at a meeting with him in March, and he was still his old self, giving his big picture socialist view of education, how we should reach out to the community, strategies, ideas, and all those young teachers at this meeting were just kind of, wow, where did this guy come from? So I guess that's 52 years of being a friend with George. So it's such an honor to do this for him.
So we have a couple of community members. I told you about North Etobicoke, and we have two fellow comrades that George worked closely with, two young people. I'm going to ask them to come up right now. Melyun Afra and Mahad, come on up. Both of them have been superstars in their own rights. Malvine is a school teacher now with the Toronto School Board. Mars is a noun author. Okay, no comment, brother, no comment. Malvine will come up and we'll have you talk afterwards. Come on, come on.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. And I've been really blessed to have met George and to have worked with him over the years. First of all, how I met George was from York University. I was a student there. And he took on himself to first notice that there's an issue going on in certain neighborhoods in our communities in Toronto, especially inner city neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods, in particular the Somali community, where we were dealing with a very high dropout rate. In Etobicoke North, Jamestown community, we were dealing with over 50% of the kids dropping out of high school. So he got all the Somali students at York University to come together to talk about what was happening, and actually created a course, which was, we didn't think it was going to be possible, but brought us together to let us know what is happening in Canada with the education system over the years, how it has changed and impacted different immigrant communities, and the same thing's happening again to the Somali community. So we took the course and he placed us in the community to work in the schools with the students and to engage the parents in the education system, which was great. So in that way, he was my professor, he was like a colleague, he was a friend, someone who really cared about the community. And then years later, when I finished school and I wanted to go back again to further my education, he was there to support me in getting into the OEZ program to do my master's. So I'm here to really say thank you so much, George, for all you have done for the community, what you have done for me in helping me get into the program and supporting me in that way. I hope you'll have many blessed years of help, and wanted to say much appreciated. A great man. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we've got a couple more messages.
Because that course you're
Bruce Curtis, yours, George, said he couldn't make the event, but maybe somebody could play Petey wheat straws. Okay, I'll learn to read at some point. Petey wheat straws bring me flowers when I'm living. Unfortunately, we couldn't find Petey wheat straws bring me flowers when I'm living, and we're hoping to try to find it on YouTube and then just put it out there, but we didn't get there. So it's on YouTube. Myra Novigrodsky.
Oh, yay!
Couldn't make it either. But I'm sorry, Charlie, and I can't be with you today. You've been an education warrior, a person who truly believes poor kids deserve what rich kids have. I remember the power of the Transport Mother's Brief, which challenged the Toronto Board of Education to de-stream schools and to have higher expectations of Regent Park kids. I remember Super School and your term as Toronto School Trustee. This magazine is about schools, made a huge contribution to creating an education intelligentsia willing to rock the boat in Ontario. My copy of this book is about schools is still on my bookshelf. As a husband, father, citizen, teacher, and friend, you've made a difference to many lives. Okay, so. Okay, turning it over to you.
Hi, George. Thanks. I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm obviously not one of the young people who was inspired by George. Like most of you, I actually just met George about 8 years ago or so. So I was just loving listening to everybody talking about their history with George. Although I just met George 8 years ago, about 4 decades before that, when I was going to school in the U.S., this magazine is about schools was the umbilical cord in Canada. I mean, it was fantastic to get it. I tend to put everything I'm about to read on my bedside, but this magazine is about schools was what I read first. It was radical, it was intellectual and grounded, it was cultural, it dealt with history, and it dealt with education in a way that integrated equality, democracy, and above all, class in terms of social change. When I met George about 8 years ago, it's the same experience that people already talked about. Meeting George was about George figuring out what I should be doing next. And my response, though, to escaping this was, and they were always terrific ideas. They were just great ideas. And my response to escaping it was to ask him to put it in writing, and let's have a discussion on it. And I'm a person who actually writes very long emails. This was nothing like what I would get that night. I would get a tome. I mean, I would get a fully completed article, and I'd be a third of the way through it, and I'd get another email from George saying, I thought of a better framework, scrap it out. And then I get a couple more, and finally with an apology saying, I won't do this anymore. But I do have an addendum that I want to which is another 20 pages or so. I mean, I can't say that George was harassing me. George was too gentle and he was too comradely to say that he was harassing me, but I could say that George was obsessively persistent. George really was a dreamer, a visionary, as people say. He really pushed the boundaries. The big frustration he had, and sometimes the big frustration he'd have with talking to me, was the gap between his dreams and the actual capacities of life. And I want to read something from Lenin, of all people. I know you were all expecting that at some time at this point in this meeting, somebody would read something from Lenin. This is from What Is to Be Done, and it's one of the most hard-headed and cold in some ways analyses of Lenin. And towards the end of it, he suddenly stops and uncharacteristically quotes this journalist called Isserov. And this is the journalist talking, first of all. If man were completely deprived of the ability to dream, if he could not from time to time run ahead of essentially what was going on, then I cannot at all imagine what stimulus there would be for art, science, and political endeavor. The rift between reality and dreams causes no harm if only the person dreaming believes seriously in his dream, if he attentively observes life, compares his observations with his castles in the air, and works conscientiously for the achievement of his fantasies. If there is some connection between dreams and life, then all is well. And then Lenin adds, of this kind of dreaming there is unfortunately too little in our movement. And this was George. What was so great about George was that his life, his politics, and his personal and social life was about trying to make that connection, always trying to figure out how to make that connection between dreams and reality. And I'm personally grateful for him pushing us on this, and in terms of what David was saying about the etymology of his name, maybe hammering us. And I'm sure all of you are as well. So thanks, George, for keeping us going in that direction. Okay, so we have another note here. It's from Fred Harris. And Fred says, I'd like to have come, but I'm recovering myself from surgery from May 30th. This week I thought I might be able to take the bus and subway. Indeed, yesterday I felt better, but today I'm feeling worse. Pushed myself too much by climbing too many stairs, so I have to limit my activities until I'm stronger. But in any case, George, Fred Harris conveys his desire that you get well soon. We talked last time at the mini shivving at Herman's place, and he's evidently passionate about educational issues. So I'm now going to turn it over to Jim.
Yeah.
Where's George? Is that George?
You do. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on the. Okay.
Right to the right.
Nope.
Is the iPhone taking over?
Yes, because something happened with this.
There we go. So I apologize for not looking on you, but I actually want to speak to George. As I listened to all the people talking about you tonight, George, I certainly recognized you in almost everybody's comments. Steve and Ken's really, I think, captured so much of what you are, and why I felt so strongly and valued our friendship. There was one reference to you tonight, though, that I didn't expect, and it's not something I've ever heard you called before, and I can't imagine calling you that, and that is my angel. I don't think of you as an angel. I'm going to end my remarks with describing you in some way I'm sure you've never been described, and I think is how I think of you. I tried to remember when we first met, and I think it was more than 35 years ago, when I was an activist, a new activist in the NDP, and active in the Left Caucus, and had been dragged in by my partner, Lynn Brown, into this work, and we were trying to figure out how to make our party into a real socialist party. And I ran into you in that context, and you were so helpful in thinking things through as we struggled to move forward. But our relationship, as you'll recall, changed dramatically when I gave up my tenure at the University of Toronto and went to work for the Ontario Federation of Labour as the Director of Education. And as you know, that job wasn't about trade union education. It was about being a labor advocate for public education and seeing what we could do to mobilize the trade union movement to be engaged in public education. Well, I was excited about that job. I think you had died and gone to heaven because it provided an opportunity to help me think through what I should do to make that job effective. And you had more ideas that I can recount or even remember almost daily of things we could be doing, the labor movement could be doing, how we could get the teachers' federations to engage the issues that you felt so strongly about and I felt so strongly about, like streaming and special education, but how we could get all the other unions seeing that the union voice on public education and fighting against streaming and speaking about the needs for real treatment of special ed children, and how we could inject class into the understanding of education was so important. So my 9 years at the Ontario Federation of Labour, I don't think there was a good thing I did or an idea I put forward that couldn't trace its origin to you. And I'm grateful for that. And then when I left the OFL to become the executive assistant to the president, national president of CUPE, you thought, oh, here's an even better opportunity. Yes, you were engaged with CUPE locals in Toronto, but my God, what could we do getting the national union to these things? And again, anything that I did useful in any way on these issues had its origin in you. And then I left all that and moved to Ottawa to work for the Canadian Association of University Teachers. And you thought this was yet another opportunity to move forward. And our relationship grew more distant just because I was in Ottawa and traveling around the country all the time. But I mean, the ideas that you had, the breadth of them, the complexity of them, the work they would need, staggered me. I just brought up one, George, that was the last one I could find in my file. You and David Clanfield were organizing a meeting to create an education policy institute. And this was a meeting that was going to last 2 hours, and it was going to have as its focus about how this institute could be conceived as a place to promote a progressive vision of education, produce publications, distribute education policy documents, and then you had a list of what we were going to discuss in those 2 hours. develop an curriculum critique, develop plans for school organization, how we can advance learners' rights and responsibilities, what we could do to mobilize education labor, both the teaching staff and the administrative staff and the custodial staff, the definition, development, and maintenance of the physical surroundings of the schools, how we could deal creatively with education governance, who and how, what we were going to do about education finance, taxation, funding, formula, and jurisdiction, how we could define education for citizenship, human rights, and the public good, identifying and evaluating forms of exclusion and models of inclusion by socioeconomic status and class, by race and ethnicity, by gender and sexual identity, by ability and disability, identifying and evaluating environmentally sustainable practices, identifying and evaluating health and safety practices, identifying and evaluating peace and nonviolence initiatives, how we could build in cooperative and competitive, how we could introduce cooperative as opposed to competitive ethics. And then, that was enough. We move on to the next agenda item, which is identifying the consequences of neoliberal policies and practices, the form and impact of privatization in the education sector, and of market-driven corporate practices. And then we talk about how we do this. We looked at how we could get help from student interns, work studies, other volunteers, funding. So that was the modest agenda, George. And she said, and I can't say that was atypical of the rest. And so I tried to think of how I would describe you to you. And that is, I never felt you thought small. You focused on compelling issues and always had large goals. But you always engaged others. And you always worked locally. It wasn't just abstract things, but you translated it down into things you could do in particular communities, engage those communities. In terms of words I'd use to describe you, one was an inspiration. You really, I think, have always been what an engaged public intellectual should be. The second, I really wrestled with the right word that other people have talked about, and I came up with the word indefatigable, which means persisting tirelessly. But actually, Sam Ginnett had a better definition of that, and that is obsessively persistent. And enthusiastic and optimistic. Amidst all of the critique and so on, you remained hopeful, you had a smile, you encouraged us. There was always something. And yet you were always also fully aware of the enormity of the challenges. But you never let that awareness slow you down or discourage you for a nanosecond. You've energized and inspired, motivated, and been a leader for me and for many others, more people than I could count or will ever know. And although we're still a long way from our vision of what education should be, we're a lot closer than we would have been without you. One of my other heroes and mentors is Ursula Franklin. And she often talked about what she called the earthworm theory of social change. As she put it, from earthworms we learn that before anything grows, there has to be prepared soil. All our efforts in writing briefs, undertaking public education, organizing, discussions, protesting, wrongdoing may leave us discouraged, but change happens, and change happens often too slowly. The only thing that can keep us going, she said, is the notion that our work prepares the soil and makes change possible. Unless there is prepared soil, no new thought and new ways of dealing with problems will or can ever arise. So, George, I never thought of myself as an earthworm before, but this humble vision of a great woman made me think differently. You have done far more than your share to prepare the soil for education, focused on citizenship, human rights, and public good. So I'm going to say something I've never said to you before. If we're earthworms, you're a giant earthworm. And we all inhabit a soil much richer and a future much brighter because of you.
Okay. Out to the world this warrior goes, fights fierce, alert, his anger knows. The Somali's plight in his last campaign asked for justice, the right to gain. The rough is stone with polished shines, words, actions, plans, he knows the lines. The teachers wrong? The schools, those two, their better selves he always knew. Two hearts make one. Elaine, he says, walking with hands, step by step. He sits now, shaking. We are too. We'll wear a mask, they say we must, but love's the thing we trust. Thank you. I'll bring it to you.
Okay.
Let's swing it around.
I'll get up this long to introduce myself. My name is Katie McGovern. I'm with the Toronto Education Workers. I'm still Katie McGovern for the side, Education Workers Toronto. And we are also known as QP 4400. We're the ones who remember food. So, I'm going to have to sit down for this. Where are you, George? Right there? Yeah. Hey, George. I was the one who was doing the woo-woos and screaming, so when you hear those big, that was me. Okay, first of all, I wasn't from the old downtown crowd. I was up in the city of York. And when we came in after the amalgamation, I looked for all like rocks, but the people in Toronto tended to think that there was not much past state tariff. And that was a little frustrating for all of us who lived on the other side of St. Clair. Remember, we remember it so well. We're not bitter. We're not bitter. There you go. There you go. But George, he just always made me feel welcome, no matter where I was. And I was trying to remember, where did I meet him? And I don't remember. I think I always knew him, but I don't think that's likely because I was born and raised in the States, so it couldn't have been there. And I was involved in a lot of things before I became a QP president in my own right in the city of York. And I know I met him, we were doing a lot of work together when the amalgamation happened, and holy mother, he was everywhere. He was absolutely everywhere. And I was so fascinated by this personality that was so big and so passionate and so smart. And happy warrior. I love happy warriors. Don't ever start giving you the old woof woof. You know, if you're going to complain, you're not going to be happy. Maybe you should take a time out. Take a time out, rest, recreate yourself, then go back to the battle. Because it's hard times, it's difficult. We need all the joy we can get in our lives, and we need to keep each other up. So, George is the, well, I was going to say all American, that's not right. All Canadian joy and love. And oh my God, he was, I can't even, well, of course I can say. He was, I think that what really amazed me is he always kept his eye on the ball. He always kept, he got class, he understood class. And I know we all talk about class here, but a lot of us haven't been living class. And class is a tough thing to get your head around, and more importantly, to get your life around. Life is really different when you're from the working class. And I always thought the working class was anybody who wasn't an owner, basically. And it included working people. It had to include immigrants because we're all working. And it included even the most marginalized. The ones who are the poorest and most marginalized are the working class that didn't get the good jobs. They were the ones who kind of got shoved off to the side. And of course, always shoved off to the side in education. And George kept his eye on the ball. He did what he said. He did what he talked about. You know, we were just listening about having all this education for QP. By Jesus, he did have a big class for QP people. It was before my time. But he had a class, and I'm sure everybody was the richer for it. And he was trying to always talk us into 4,400 into doing the class, but that was only one of about 1,400 things that he would come up with. And the thing that was interesting is when we were in the middle of our hardest struggles, which only lasted from 1998 through, I don't know, maybe 2017. But it was a little harder at the beginning because we actually had 12,000 members spread out over 1,000 locations. And boy, talk about your struggle in communicating. There you go. Anyway, he was a big believer in writing. And he always had these wonderful ideas, but it was always in the middle of one of our crises or not. And I kept saying, yeah, later, later. But the ideas he had were so spectacular. I felt like garbage because I couldn't, just throw everything down and start doing whatever he thought about. But he did talk me into writing for the, Shelley, what was the name of that publication that you were on? Boardwatch. First of all, he talked Shelley into being the editor of Boardwatch, and he was there too, being an editor, and talked me into writing some stories about what was going on. And I am so grateful because I look back, and it was such a brilliant diary of what was going on. And that publication was, to this day, I just love rereading it because it is the history of where we were at the very beginning. There are so many. Oh, and George also was a guy who never lost track of how important getting rid of streaming was. And I know when we did probably, the intellectuals figured this out a little sooner than some of us, but when there was the amalgamation, George was trying desperately to get the teachers' unions and us, although what we could do about it, anyway, to really put in the good fight against streaming. And he was relentless, and it was constant, and he was always pushing it, and he was right. And as we went through the amalgamation and all the lappity-loo that we had to go through, he finally brought people over to remember that was not a dead issue anymore. It may have been losing steam in the old Toronto, but it got a whole new life when they managed to put us all together. And we are under the control of the province, and that would be the Tories, and then the Liberals, and I'm not going to say North York, but we seem to have an awful lot of Marguerite-type people. And there was, in fact, she was a piece of work. She was a kindergarten teacher. I cannot. I can just imagine this woman walking in and terrorizing these little tiny kids. Anyway, that's another life, another story. My darling, I just wanted to say you are so loved, and I love you, and we're going to continue to love you and respect you and remember all the things that you did and what you will be doing in the future, because like you, I'm a happy warrior who is always full of confidence, and I know that you will make a difference every single day of the life that you have, because you have made a difference in all of us. And you know what? Listening to this, this is my George Martell line. Did you all notice that we've just actually come up with the outline of the political biography of George Martell? Thank you very much.
The little city of New York, small but very, well, very. How about Donna Kwan? Okay, anyway, I was a vice principal. So, have I missed anybody yet? David has a message from
Errol Sharp.
Okay, and Sheila, shall I bring it over to you? You want to? Sure. Well, I'm going to walk by David, and then I'm going to bring it over to you. Okay. There, David. It's like it's the worst one. So.
Okay. You all probably know who Errol Sharp is, the publisher of Progressive Books, publisher of Fernwood Books. Well, I'm married to Lindsay Sharp, his mom, and he emailed me today to say, Errol wants me to say that George gave me my first job teaching in university. I've been teaching ever since, and not only that, he gave me a whole frame of ideas that I have stayed with me for my entire teaching career at St. Mary's University.
Mine is a short story. I was trustee on the Toronto District School Board, having come from the United States as a Democrat, which I thought was really left-wing. I thought was really left-wing. Oops. And was on the board for a while, and we're championing the heritage language stuff. And this one, it was supposed to be a night, but it wasn't a night. It was 3 nights of deputations. I think there were 146 and we sat through all of them. And a lot of people from North Toronto came down and accused us of being communists. I was a pretty naive person, and I thought, I don't know if I'm a communist. Well, communists and Marxists. I don't know. I could be, but what the hell do I know? So I went to George, and I said, George, am I a Marxist? And he patted me on the top of the head and said, I don't think you need to worry about that, dear.
John.
Yeah. Go easy.
Where's George?
Right here.
Oh, there he is, okay. Well, I don't know whether he's getting tired, but I think everybody else in the room is. He probably is. I just had a few words to say, and I will say them as briefly as I possibly can, but I do think I have several experiences that I've shared with George that haven't really been mentioned yet, perhaps adequately. So I will speak to them now, and but I should say to begin with, I'm very pleased to be here, and I really take my hat off to those who made this event happen. I'm also very pleased to be asked to speak, not so much because George and I were an intimate pair of friends, as some of you might have been over the years, but because we shared some important moments together, and we did care for each other, moments together, and we did care for each other. Indeed, several years ago, on the occasion of some anniversary or other of this magazine, a number of us who have been associated with the magazine over the years were asked to pen a paragraph about some word that evoked just what the experience of producing the magazine, as I had done for a decade as a member of the editorial board, had meant to them. The word I chose was solidarity, because I found that in working with George and others on this magazine, and I think of a whole range of people who did so, from Rick Salutin to Danny Drates to Mel Watkins to Meg Lutz, to a whole range of people who were involved, that the idea of, but more importantly, the practice of solidarity bound us all together very closely. And I want to thank George for the opportunity I had to work with him and others to embody that practice. Thus, when I returned from a long period in Africa in the early 1970s, I was looking for things to do that made some larger sense to me. One of these was Southern African support work, of course, with Ticklepack and Ticklesack, as I get engaged in. But George and some of his colleagues offered me another front for the struggle as well. They're busy transforming the journal, this magazine, is about schools, into this magazine. A magazine still interested in schools, of course, but one with a broader remit, from that being to assist on a broad range of fronts in the transforming of Canada along left nationalist lines, and with an emphasis on both the words left and nationalist. And George was a strong spirit behind the magazine's move towards a broader and even more marked left practice. In this effort, he and I were comrades from the get-go, and no one here needs reminding of how hard and effectively George could work to realize aims that he really believed in. Myself, I had to work hard to try and keep up with him. But there was a second front of shared struggle where our paths crossed. This was up at Atkinson College at York University, mentioned only in passing, but it is important too. Then still a college designed primarily to service the needs of working-class students that the higher education student system had until then merely passed over. My old friend from Tanzania days, the late Griff Cunningham, first posed the question as to whether I'd like to join him in the social design department of Atkinson, where George and many others, Howard and Jerry and a whole range of people, many with academic records as scruffy as my own, were already at work. George, for one, was particularly enthusiastic about this possibility, and soon Griff and George and others were seeking out the Van Dien, Harry Crow, to make it happen. And so again, I found myself among like-minded comrades
George again very prominent among them, while we carried out, as a real team and over many years, educational work of a particularly positive, fulfilling, and dare I say it, genuinely progressive kind. So George, again, thanks muchly for the opportunities, and thanks too for the memories. Love you, bud, and so say all of us. Thank you.
Okay, now we're getting close to the end of this. So I'm going to turn it over to Satu, who is going to say a few things, and then Lisa, who has a message from George. Satu.
Are we going to sing anything at the end?
For me?
Are we going to sing anything at the end? Solidarity.
Absolutely, sure.
Well, I only know the first verse.
That's all you need, really. Just keep singing.
Testing, can you hear me? Hi, George. I'm glad you can watch us all.
Louder, mommy. Like right into the mic. Okay. Hug the mic. Keep it right close.
Okay. So, if you didn't hear me, you can hear me now. I will talk about the history of my relationship with you, George. I must say, and I probably have bragging rights, I have known George longer than anybody else here. There might have been one person, Art Davis, that would have known him longer, but he's not here. So I have known him a long time. So in a sense, he's been an important person in my life for over 50 years, since the early party of the heavy 60s. He was then part of a group of friends, many of them from the Maritimes, who would party together at local co-ops in the annex or sit together in nearby pubs arguing about heavy topics. The relevance of Marx, Freud, Wilhelm Reich, Marcuse, A.S. Neil, Summerhill, and of course, how to change the world and begin to build that non-repressive civilization Marcuse writes about. We would also meet at anti-Vietnam demonstrations and at poetry readings of the likes of Margaret Atwood and Milton Acorn at the ironically named the Bohemian Embassy in the then ramshackle Yorkville. When George returned from graduate studies in England a couple of years later, he became part of a group centered around Bob Davis, serious about starting a magazine on education. Its purpose was to look critically at what was happening to children and youth in our schools and bring news about alternatives, including the Summerhill-inspired schools that were beginning to emerge. George's first article on education was in the first issue of this magazine is about schools. It was a review of Edgar Friedenberg's Coming of Age in America. George's piece was called High School, No Place to Find Out Who You Are. Many of the themes of George's critique of public education, including how they break and fragment the consciousness of children from subordinate groups, can already be found here. Perhaps also the working class kids George met while working a few years later as a youth worker downtown in their own consciousness raising for George. A group of them led by Clay Boris, who later became a filmmaker, followed George to his home in the annex after he had quit his youth worker job. These teenagers wanted to spend time with him and learn from him. Point Blank School emerged. For George, what followed was a lifetime of writing and social activism, fighting for the rights of kids from racialized and superordinate groups, both inside and outside the school system. Much can be said about this important work. In fact, much has been said about this important work. So I will now turn to my more personal reasons for loving and treasuring him. George and I had been friends, comrades, and colleagues for much over these 50-plus years. But we were also married for 17 years, co-parenting Sylvia, Maria, and Lisa. And we are now grandparents of 7 grandchildren and part of an affectionate, sprawling, modern extended family, which includes stepchildren and ex-spouses. George has shown himself to be not just a radical educator, but also a great parent and mentor to his own children and their offspring. He's a good listener, a good storyteller, and good at encouraging them to pursue what matters to them. I still remember when Maria in grade 9 complained about history making no sense and being so boring. George pulled out Leo Huberman's Man's Worldly Goods and insisted she read it. It was an eye-opener for her and made her ask challenging questions at school from then on. Lisa, 11 years younger, considered the book a talisman of a sort, carrying it in her knapsack while traveling, together with Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams. George by then had convinced her of the importance of understanding psychoanalysis. Now, Granddad George has a great listener in Hazel, who is 11 and who is here somewhere. She had been particularly fascinated by his stories about his aristocratic ancestors who had fled France when Huguenots were persecuted there in the 17th century. At the age of 4, it was difficult to dissuade her that she herself hadn't been very much wronged. With a different turn in history, she would now be at least a duchess. She told her very skeptical daycare teacher. George and Elaine, my husband Peter and I, have grown close over the years, going out for impromptu brunches and planned dinners. There's nothing like 4 grandparents having an opportunity to indulge in telling stories about their grandchildren without boring everybody else. George, I always remember you as somebody who knows how to inspire people, to offer a vision of what a more just society would look like, and reasons why it's worth fighting for. This was never just an abstract cause for you, but guides you in all your dealings with people. You are loving and respectful and attentive to the lives and aspirations of others. Often after a conversation with you, one feels somehow more energized and more purposeful, more worthy as a human being. Thank you for all the light you radiate.
Okay, George, it's your turn. Actually, this kind of works out better because, sorry? No. So it's not his turn yet.
He's now an author and he's been mentored.
George was actually talking about you on what, Monday?
Monday, yeah.
Okay, Mahad, come forward, please.
So I look into that, right?
Yeah.
Hi, George. I'm happy to be here. I want to say thanks for everything.
Speak more into the mic.
I think you're a very good man. You're a person who stood for justice for a very long time. And I hope a lot of people use the kind of courage that you had. And I hope that I live and have courage like you to stand by my beliefs until I die.
Come forward.
George, a quick word. I worked with you on the Ontario Education Alliance, working on Adult ESL, Norm Beach. I'm very pleased that this is happening tonight. You brought a lot of people together at that time, and you brought them together again. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, anybody? No? Okay. So this is one of those situations, George, you actually have to submit your remarks in writing and have somebody else read them. I know it's hard. I know actually George, he would love to be here talking. He would be so excited. He'd fall asleep and then he would get up and he'd talk some more. But I'm now going to turn it over to Lisa, who actually has what he wrote to say.
George, to see us, but I also want to talk to you because this is a message from George to you all, who he loves. And I want to say on behalf of the family, how grateful we all are to everyone who's contributed to this event and brought all this love into the room for George.
Dear friends, let me say first how grateful and happy I am that this gathering is taking place. The people in this room mean the world to me. As you can imagine, I so wish I could be with you here tonight, but Elaine and I are glued to our television set and taking you all in on YouTube. You know, when your time is short, the importance of love in your life hits you like a ton of bricks. I've been so blessed in my life, a loving marriage, wonderful kids and grandchildren, and so many friends. Many of you here tonight who are so precious to me. What strikes me now, sorry guys, is that what we share is how important love is in our lives. And I think it's what brings us together in the most fundamental way. And I don't mean that sentimentally. I was thinking especially for those of us who were teachers about our relations with our students. What we know is that loving our students is what we do as teachers. What that means, in opposition to the vicious corporate agenda in our schools, is that we know that every one of our students has their own extraordinary human spirit that has been with them all their lives. And it is our job to help our students realize that spirit, to take hold of the world in as powerful and loving a way as they can, to nourish the learning spirit in our children, as Marie Baptiste puts it. We also know that loving our students means opening them to the great human story of which they are a part and helping them participate in moving that story forward. There are many ways of saying this story. One way is to say that this is the story of building home, and to engage our students in what that means to build home, the heart of the real, building caring families and communities, and struggling to provide an economy that makes that possible, a struggle with vast obstacles, as we know. The story of building home is fundamental to us, from our First Nations to our latest immigrants. And I know how much we share that understanding. And when I think about the people in this room, I realize how much you have contributed to my understanding of this reality, to my understanding of the world around me, and how grateful I am to you all for passing on your strength and your commitment to make it a better world. Thank you. With all my love, George.
Wow.
Okay, so we've come to the end of the evening, George. I think.
He's still here.
Oh, he's there. Oh, this one. Okay, we've come to the end of the evening, George. I think we have one last thing to do, which is, if we had a glass in our hand, we'd raise it, but it looks like a lot of people don't. So raise whatever you want to, just in tribute to you. And just to let you know, too, that you still have a lot of work to do. And we're all looking at you. Good night, George. Take care.
Thanks, George.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to lead you all.
You will need the mic.
I don't need the mic, but yeah, I will. George, this is the George Martell choir. We've been practicing for about 3 weeks. I'm sure everybody's going to get that was wonderful. We're all really wonderful. I hope you guys all know this first verse. And the union, declaration,